"Your mother is alive. I saw her in the dump," the poor boy shouted to the millionaire. His father, a quiet man who worked long hours in a small workshop, never spoke much about the past, and Arjun had learned not to ask questions. The story of his mother was like a shadow in the corners of his childhood, something that existed but was never to be touched. Photographs of her were scarce. A single faded black and white picture showed a gentle woman smiling softly at the camera, her eyes warm and kind. Arjun would often stare at that photograph, wondering what kind of person she really was, what stories she might have told him, and what love he had missed. Life for Arjun had been hard. Their small home was cramped, with peeling paint and creaky wooden floors. Money was always tight, and every day brought a new challenge. Despite the difficulties, Arjun had grown up with a strong sense of responsibility. He helped his father in the workshop, learned to mend small machines, and often went out to do odd jobs to earn extra money. Though he was only 16, he felt the weight of the world on his shoulders. Still, there was always a spark in him, a quiet hope that life could be different, that maybe he could find the happiness that seemed just beyond reach. One sweltering afternoon, after finishing work at the workshop, Arjun decided to take a different route home. The main streets were crowded and noisy, filled with the constant buzz of people, rickshaws, and vendors calling out to sell their goods. He wanted to clear his mind, to walk somewhere quieter where he could think without interruption. That's when he found himself on the outskirts of the city, where the streets ended in a wide, open area filled with mountains of trash. The dump was enormous, with piles of discarded plastic, old furniture, broken electronics, and rotting food. The smell was overwhelming, and the heat made it even harder to breathe. Most people avoided this place, fearing the dirt, the smell, and the dangerous scraps hidden in the piles. But Arjun had never been afraid of hard work or unpleasant sights. He often thought of the dump as a place full of forgotten treasures, things that someone else had discarded but could still be useful. As he walked carefully among the mounds of garbage, he noticed people scavenging through the piles, looking for anything they could sell or use. There were men and women, young and old, all focused on survival in a way that made the city's busy streets seem like a distant world. As he moved deeper into the dump, Arjun's eyes fell on a figure in the distance. A woman was bending over a pile of old newspapers, her hands moving quickly as she sorted through the mess. She was small and frail, her clothes torn and patched in many places. Her hair, once probably dark, was now streaked with gray and tangled from months of neglect. Her face, though smudged with dirt, had a softness that caught Arjun off guard. There was something familiar in the way she moved, the way she held herself. Something about her presence made his heart skip a beat. He stopped in his tracks, unsure if he should approach her. The rational part of his mind told him it was impossible, that this woman could not possibly be his mother. He had heard the stories all his life. She had died when he was a baby. Yet the feeling in his chest would not let him walk away. He took a cautious step forward, then another, until he was close enough to see her more clearly. Her hands were rough and calloused from work, but there was a gentleness in the way she touched the newspapers, as if she were handling something precious. Arjun's curiosity grew into something stronger, something like hope. He found himself whispering to himself, almost afraid to speak too loudly. Could it really be? He didn't finish the sentence. His heart pounded in his chest as he watched her work, the heat of the sun pressing down on them both, the smell of the dump strong in his nostrils. He had never seen her before, not really, but every instinct in him screamed that this woman might be the mother he had never known. For several minutes, he just watched, too nervous to move closer. Then, gathering all his courage, he called out softly, "Excuse me, ma'am." The woman looked up, her eyes narrowing at first, then softening when she saw a young boy standing there, watching her so intently. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice weak but steady. Arjun hesitated, searching for the right words. How could he even begin to explain what he felt? How could he ask someone if they were his mother when he wasn't even sure himself? Finally, he took a deep breath and spoke, his voice trembling slightly. I think I know you. I think you might be my mother." The words hung in the air, heavy and strange. The woman froze, her hands stopping mid-motion. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then she blinked slowly, as if trying to remember something distant. Her eyes softened, and a strange expression of recognition, shock, and fear crossed her face. Arjun felt a mixture of fear and hope. What if she denied it? What if he was wrong? But something in her gaze told him that she remembered him, that there was a part of her that had always been waiting for this moment, even if she could not fully believe it. My son, she whispered, her voice trembling. The words were almost a question, almost disbelief. Arjun nodded, tears forming in his eyes. Yes, I'm Arjun, I'm your son. The woman dropped the small pile of newspapers and held out her hands, shaking slightly. Arjun stepped closer, and for the first time in his life, he felt a strange, powerful connection with the person he had only ever imagined in stories and photographs. She held him tightly, and he could feel her trembling, the weight of years lost, the sorrow of separation, and the love that had never died. They stood there for a long time, surrounded by the stench and chaos of the dump, but for both of them it was a moment of beauty, of life, and of reunion. After a while, she pulled back slightly, looking into his eyes. I never wanted to leave you, she said softly. Circumstances, they forced me away. I never forgot you, not even for a single day. Arjun listened, feeling a mixture of sadness and relief. All the questions he had carried for years now had answers, and yet there was still so much to learn. He wanted to know everything, why she had left, where she had been, how she had survived. But he also knew that this was only the beginning. The woman, whose name was Mira, began to tell him small pieces of her story. She spoke of poverty, of family struggles, and of the mistakes that had separated them. Her voice was quiet, almost broken at times, but there was honesty in every word. Arjun listened carefully, his mind racing to piece together the fragments of the past. He asked gentle questions, careful not to overwhelm her, and she answered as best she could, sometimes pausing to remember details or to hold back tears. As the sun began to set, casting a warm, golden light over the dump, Arjun realized he could not leave her there. He took her hand and said, "Come with me, come home, we can figure everything out together." At first, she hesitated, unsure if the world outside the dump could accept her, unsure if she was ready to face the life she had left behind. But looking into Arjun's eyes, seeing the love and hope shining there, she finally nodded. They walked out of the dump together, two figures who had been lost for so long finally finding each other. Arjun felt a mixture of joy, relief, and determination. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. There were years to catch up on, wounds to heal, and a life to rebuild. But for the first time, he felt whole. The boy who had once wandered alone through life now had his mother by his side, and nothing else seemed to matter. As they reached the edge of the city, Arjun looked back one last time at the dump, the place where he had found what he had been searching for all his life. What others saw as filth and despair had been the backdrop for a miracle, the reunion of a mother and her son. He squeezed Mira's hand and whispered, "We're together now. Nothing can separate us again." She smiled softly, tears running down her face, and nodded. And so began a new chapter in their lives, one filled with hope, love, and the promise that even in the darkest places, life could surprise you with something beautiful. After that extraordinary day at the dump, Arjun could not stop thinking about the woman he had met, Mira. Her face, worn yet gentle, her trembling hands, and the faint echo of familiarity in her voice haunted him constantly. Every time he closed his eyes, he could see her sorting through the trash, searching for pieces of paper and scraps, unaware that her lost son was watching her from a distance. For days, he found himself walking near the edge of the city, hoping to catch another glimpse, hoping to find more evidence that she was truly his mother. At first, Arjun tried to convince himself that it was just a fleeting illusion, a trick of his mind. But every detail, the way she walked, the curve of her smile, the way she looked at him, felt too real to be imagined. He remembered the photograph he had of his mother and realized with a shock that the resemblance was uncanny. The same warmth in the eyes, the same softness in the expression, even in her old, tired face, had survived the years. Despite the strong feelings in his heart, Arjun knew he had to be careful. The dump was a place where people were cautious, often defensive. He did not want to frighten her or make her feel pressured. Instead, he began observing her from a distance. Early in the morning, he would take small walks near the outskirts of the city, pretending to run errands, while his eyes constantly searched for her familiar figure. He watched as she dug through discarded items, carefully selecting what might have value, moving with a quiet determination that spoke of years of survival. Arjun noticed small habits that reminded him of the stories his father had once told him about his mother. She hummed softly to herself while working, a melody that seemed almost forgotten, yet somehow familiar. Her hands, though rough, moved with care, gently handling fragile things as if she could not bear to hurt them. She paused occasionally to rest, her eyes distant, staring at nothing in particular as if memories were flooding her mind. Every detail made Arjun more certain that this woman was his mother. Unable to contain his curiosity any longer, Arjun began asking people in the neighborhood about her. It was not easy. The dump was a place few cared to talk about, and the people who worked there were wary of strangers. "Who is she?" he asked cautiously one afternoon, approaching an older man sorting through metal scraps. The man looked up, squinting at him. "She's just another woman trying to survive," he said. "Don't bother her, she's been here for years." Arjun persisted, gently asking questions over several days, learning small pieces of information bit by bit. He discovered her name, Mira, and that she had been living in the outskirts for many years, away from family and friends. Some people said she had once had a family, but life had forced her into this harsh place. Others mentioned that she was quiet, rarely speaking of herself, and often seemed lost in thought. Every fragment he learned made his heart ache. He could feel the weight of years lost, the stories untold, and the bond that had been broken by circumstances beyond anyone's control. Arjun also noticed that Mira seemed to recognize him at times. Not fully, not openly, but there were moments when her eyes would linger a little longer, when her hands would tremble slightly as if remembering something from the past. One day, he saw her pause mid-action, staring at a small piece of paper she had picked up. Her lips moved, almost forming words as though she was trying to recall something buried deep in her memory. Arjun's heart raced. Could it be that she remembered him too? He wanted to approach her again, but he was afraid of overwhelming her. He knew that after so many years of struggle and isolation, she might be scared to reconnect. Still, the desire to know the truth was stronger than his fear. He began carrying small gifts with him, a bar of soap, a packet of biscuits, a clean scarf. These were simple gestures, but he hoped they would show her kindness and care without forcing her to confront memories she might not yet be ready to face. One afternoon, as he approached the dump, he saw her struggling with a heavy bag. Without thinking, he ran to help her. She looked up, startled at first, but then her eyes softened. "Thank you," she said quietly. Arjun smiled, feeling a connection growing between them even if unspoken. From that day onward, he began helping her regularly. He carried her bags, shared food, and sometimes sat with her while she worked. Slowly, she began to speak in small fragments about her life, stories of childhood, of simple joys, and of hardships. The more she spoke, the more Arjun noticed the coincidences, the tiny details that matched the stories his father had once told him about his mother. She mentioned places he had never visited, yet that matched descriptions he had seen in old photographs. She told him about a lullaby she used to sing, and the melody was the same one he had heard in his dreams, a song that had comforted him when he was small and afraid. Every story, every word, deepened his belief that this woman was indeed the mother he had been searching for. Despite his growing certainty, Arjun struggled with patience. Some days he wanted to demand answers to force her to admit the truth, but he knew that trust could not be rushed. He remembered how fragile she seemed, how life had hardened her yet left her vulnerable. So he waited, choosing to show love through actions rather than words, hoping that one day she would share her story fully. One evening, as the sun dipped low in the sky and the dump was bathed in a soft orange glow, Arjun noticed something unusual. Mira had stopped her work and was sitting quietly on a pile of discarded newspapers, her eyes distant. She seemed lost in thought, almost as if she were searching for memories she had long buried. Arjun sat nearby, unsure whether to speak or remain silent. He waited patiently, his heart aching with anticipation. After several minutes, Mira spoke, her voice trembling. "Do you know your father?" she asked, almost hesitantly. Arjun nodded. "Yes, I live with him. I always thought I would never see you." Her eyes filled with tears, and for a moment she seemed unable to continue. Arjun's chest tightened. He wanted to reach out to comfort her, but he stayed still, letting her words come at her own pace. Finally, she spoke again, sharing a glimpse of her past. She told him how poverty and misfortune had forced her to leave, how she had tried to survive, and how she had never stopped thinking about the son she had lost. Her words were broken, scattered, yet full of emotion. Arjun listened, feeling a mix of sadness and understanding. He realized that life had been cruel to both of them, yet it had also brought them back together against all odds. Over the next few days, Arjun continued to learn more about her past. He discovered that she had been forced into difficult circumstances, losing contact with family and friends. She had endured hardships that were almost unimaginable, yet she had survived with dignity and quiet strength. Arjun admired her resilience and felt a growing respect for the woman he had once only seen in a photograph. The realization that this fragile yet strong woman was his mother filled him with both pride and sorrow. He also began to notice small changes in her behavior. She would glance at him more often, sometimes offering a tentative smile. Occasionally, she would speak of memories that seemed to belong to both of them, moments from his early childhood that he barely remembered but that she recalled vividly. These shared recollections strengthened the invisible bond between them, a bond that had survived years of separation and hardship. Despite the progress, there were moments of doubt and frustration. Mira would sometimes retreat into silence, her eyes clouded with sadness. Arjun understood that these moments were not about him, but about the pain she carried. He learned to give her space, to be patient, and to trust that, in time, she would open up completely. He also realized that their journey was just beginning. Rebuilding a lost relationship was not easy, but it was possible with love, patience, and understanding. One afternoon, while helping her sort through a pile of old items, Arjun found a small notebook hidden under some papers. The pages were worn and yellowed with age. As he carefully opened it, he realized it contained letters, fragments of stories, and even sketches that she had made over the years. His hands trembled as he read through the notebook, discovering pieces of her life that confirmed his suspicions. Each word, each memory brought him closer to the truth he had been seeking for so long. Mira noticed the notebook in his hands and looked at him with a mixture of fear and hope. "Do you want to see everything?" she asked softly. Arjun nodded, his eyes filled with tears. She began to share the stories written in the notebook, telling him about her struggles, her fears, and her dreams. As she spoke, Arjun felt the years of separation melt away, replaced by understanding, compassion, and the first signs of trust between mother and son. By the end of those long, emotional days, Arjun knew without a doubt that she was his mother. The evidence was everywhere, in her stories, in her memories, in the little details that matched his own knowledge of her past. The connection between them was undeniable, a thread woven through time and hardship now brought to light. He felt a deep sense of relief, a sense of closure, and a budding hope for the future. And yet, Arjun understood that their journey was far from over. The world outside the dump would be challenging for her, and there were many obstacles they would have to face together. But for the first time, he felt that they could overcome anything because they had each other. The bond that had been lost for so long was now being rebuilt, one small step at a time, with love, patience, and unwavering hope guiding them forward. Days had passed since Arjun had discovered Mira at the dump. Each day had been a slow, careful dance of observation, small gestures, and quiet conversations. Arjun had learned much about her life, yet he knew that the truth was still incomplete. The notebook he had found, filled with fragments of memories and letters, had opened a window into her past, but the final pieces of the puzzle were still hidden. He needed to hear her story directly from her lips, in her own words. That morning, Arjun woke with a sense of purpose. He had decided that today he would confront the reality of their relationship, not with anger or accusation, but with love, curiosity, and a desperate need for truth. He gathered a small bag with food, water, and the notebook, and made his way to the edge of the dump. The sun was still low in the sky, casting a golden light over the piles of discarded materials. It was a quiet morning, almost peaceful, and Arjun felt a strange sense of calm despite the tension in his chest. He found Mira where he often did, hunched over a pile of old newspapers, her fingers sorting carefully through the papers as if each one were precious. She looked up when she noticed him approaching, her eyes wary yet soft. Arjun walked slowly toward her, kneeling beside her as he gently set down the bag he had brought. "Mira," he said softly, "I know you've shared some of your story, but I need to understand everything. I need to know why we were separated and why life took you so far away from me." For a moment, Mira did not speak. She looked at him, her eyes brimming with tears, and shook her head slightly. "Arjun, it's not easy," she whispered. "These memories, they hurt. I have tried so hard to forget, but every time I do, the pain comes back. Arjun reached out, taking her hand gently in his own. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. "I just want to know, I want to understand my mother." Her gaze softened, and she took a deep breath. "If you want to know, then you must listen carefully," she said. And so, in the midst of the dump, surrounded by piles of discarded objects and the faint hum of the city in the distance, Mira began to tell her story. She spoke of her life before Arjun was born, of her youth filled with dreams and hopes, and of a young love that had promised a family filled with happiness. But life, as she explained, was not always kind. She had faced hardships that she could not have imagined, including financial struggles, family conflicts, and circumstances that forced her to make choices no mother should ever have to make. Her voice trembled at times, but she continued, determined to share the truth. When Arjun listened to her speak of the days after his birth, his heart ached. Mira explained how she had been forced to leave him in the care of his father due to circumstances beyond her control. She spoke of the fear, the sorrow, and the endless longing that had filled her days. "Every night," she said, "I would think of you. I would wonder if you were warm, if you were safe, if you remembered me in any small way. I never stopped thinking about you, Arjun, never." Tears streamed down Arjun's face as he listened. For the first time, he understood the depth of her suffering, the sacrifices she had made, and the courage it had taken to survive in a world that had treated her so harshly. He reached out, holding her hand tightly, feeling the warmth and reality of her presence. "Mother," he whispered, "I never stopped thinking about you either. I always hoped that one day we would meet." Mira's eyes filled with tears, and for a long moment, they just sat there, holding hands in the quiet morning. The noise of the dump seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them and the bond that had survived years of separation. She continued, recounting how she had ended up in the dump, forced by circumstances and bad luck to live a life of survival among the discarded and forgotten. She spoke of hunger, cold nights, loneliness, and the small acts of kindness from strangers that had kept her going. Arjun listened intently, absorbing every word. He could feel the weight of her years, the pain she had endured, and yet also the resilience that had allowed her to survive. He realized that the woman before him was not weak. She was strong in ways he could only begin to understand. And he also understood that their reunion was not just a matter of finding each other. It was a matter of healing, of bridging years of pain with love and understanding. Over the next few hours, Mira continued to share details of her life. She spoke of lost opportunities, of moments when she had thought she would never see her son again, and of the quiet hope that had sustained her. Arjun asked questions gently, careful not to rush her, careful to let her tell the story in her own way. Each answer brought clarity, each story revealed a piece of the puzzle, and slowly the mystery of the years apart began to make sense. As she spoke, Arjun noticed small expressions in her face, the way her eyes softened when she mentioned his father, the way her hands trembled when she spoke of the hardships she had endured alone. He began to realize that while she had suffered greatly, she had never stopped loving him. Every word she spoke was filled with longing, with regret, and with a desire to reconnect. He felt a profound sense of empathy and compassion, understanding that her actions had been driven by circumstances, not by choice. Eventually, Mira paused, exhausted from the flood of emotions and memories. Arjun gently encouraged her to rest, and she leaned back against a pile of newspapers, her face streaked with tears but glowing with a quiet relief. "Thank you for listening," she said softly. "I never thought I would have the courage to speak all of this aloud. I was afraid that you would hate me or that you would not want me in your life." Arjun shook his head, his voice firm yet gentle. "Mother, I could never hate you. I have waited my whole life for this moment. I want you in my life. I want us to be together to rebuild what was lost. We can face the world together now." A small, tentative smile appeared on Mira's face. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of hope, a sense that perhaps life had not abandoned her entirely. The bond between mother and son, once broken, was beginning to be restored. The long years of separation, the pain and uncertainty, were slowly giving way to understanding, trust, and love. As the day wore on, they talked about practical matters as well. Arjun wanted to know where she would stay, how they could help her adjust to life outside the dump, and what steps they could take to begin rebuilding their lives together. Mira admitted that the world outside was intimidating, but she also expressed a willingness to try, to step into a new life with her son. Arjun promised that he would not let her face it alone. Together, they began to make plans, small steps that would gradually lead to a more stable and secure life. One of the most touching moments of the day came when Mira picked up the notebook Arjun had found and looked at it with reverence. "I had forgotten these," she said softly. "These are pieces of my past, pieces I thought were lost forever. But now they can help us remember, help us rebuild." Arjun nodded, understanding that these small fragments were more than just memories. They were a bridge to the life they had lost, a connection that could guide them forward. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the dump, Arjun and Mira sat together, hand in hand. The world around them, chaotic and harsh, seemed to fade away. For the first time in years, they felt whole. The confrontation, the revelation, and the sharing of memories had not only confirmed their bond, it had strengthened it. They were no longer two strangers brought together by chance. They were mother and son, united by love, resilience, and the courage to face the truth. Arjun realized that this was only the beginning of a long journey. There would be challenges ahead, adjustments to make, and wounds to heal. But he also knew that with Mira by his side, and with their bond growing stronger each day, they could face anything. The reunion had brought not only answers, but also hope. A hope that life, even after years of hardship, could still offer happiness, love, and a second chance. That night, as they walked away from the dump together, Arjun felt a sense of peace he had never known. Mira leaned on him, tired but calm, and he knew that the days ahead would be difficult, yet filled with promise. They had confronted the past, revealed the hidden truths, and taken the first steps toward a new life. For Arjun and Mira, the reunion was more than just finding each other. It was a journey of healing, understanding, and the rediscovery of a love that had never truly faded. And so, as the city lights began to flicker in the distance and the stars appeared in the sky, they walked together, side by side, ready to face the world as mother and son, bound by a bond that no hardship, no separation, and no time could ever break. After the emotional confrontation at the dump, Arjun and Mira had taken the first steps toward reconnecting, but their journey was only beginning. Walking away from the dump that had been both a place of despair and a place of reunion, they carried with them not only memories of pain, but also the fragile hope of a new beginning. The city stretched before them, alive with noise, people, and endless possibilities. For Arjun, it felt like stepping into a world that was both familiar and completely new, a world where he and his mother could finally start over. The first challenge they faced was finding a safe and stable place for Mira to live. Arjun's father, Hari, had been supportive of his son, though cautious and reserved. When Arjun brought Mira home that evening, his father was startled at first. He had believed she was gone forever, that the past had been sealed. But seeing his son and the frail yet strong woman he now realized was his wife's companion, Hari quickly understood the situation. After a long, quiet pause, he stepped forward and offered his hand to Mira. "Welcome home," he said softly. The words were simple, but they carried a weight of acceptance and relief that made Mira's eyes fill with tears. Life at home was an adjustment for both mother and son. Mira had spent years surviving in the harsh environment of the dump, and suddenly she was surrounded by comfort, warmth, and the safety of a home. Even small things, clean sheets, a proper meal, a roof over her head, felt almost magical to her. Arjun watched carefully, helping her adapt, encouraging her to take small steps. He reminded her gently of daily routines, shared stories of his own life, and included her in every conversation, making sure she never felt like a stranger in the house she had once left behind. Mira, in turn, worked hard to adjust. She learned to navigate the simple tasks that many took for granted, cooking with new ingredients, managing household chores, and interacting with neighbors. Some days were easier than others. She would sometimes retreat into silence, lost in memories of the years spent alone. But Arjun was patient, understanding that healing was not linear. He would sit with her, sometimes holding her hand, sometimes simply being present, offering quiet support. Slowly, Mira began to smile more often, to laugh at small things, and to feel the warmth of family once again. The bond between Arjun and Mira deepened each day. They shared stories, memories, and dreams that had been left unspoken for years. Arjun would often tell her about his childhood, the moments he had spent imagining her, and the ways he had felt her absence. Mira, in turn, shared her own memories, recounting the struggles she had faced and the little joys that had kept her going. Together, they began to weave a new narrative, one that included both the pain of the past and the hope of the future. Education became a focus as well. Arjun, who had always loved to learn despite his difficult circumstances, encouraged Mira to read and write again. She had been denied opportunities in her youth, and now, in the safety of her home, she could explore the world of knowledge she had missed. Arjun would sit beside her, helping her read letters, understand news articles, and write down her own thoughts. Mira found joy in these small victories, realizing that it was never too late to grow, to learn, and to reclaim a part of life she had been forced to give up. Community support also played a role in their journey. Friends, neighbors, and even strangers who had heard of their story offered assistance. Some brought food, others helped with household repairs, and a few simply offered companionship. Mira, who had spent years isolated, was initially shy and hesitant to accept help. But seeing the genuine kindness of those around her, she slowly began to open up. She realized that the world could be a place of care and connection, not just hardship, and that she had a role in rebuilding her life within it. One of the most emotional moments came when Arjun suggested they visit the places of Mira's past, the streets she had walked, the markets she had scavenged, and the neighborhoods she had once called home. At first, Mira was hesitant, fearing that returning might bring back too much pain. But Arjun insisted gently, explaining that facing the past was part of healing. Together, they walked through the city, revisiting familiar corners and landmarks. Each step brought memories, some painful, some comforting, but ultimately they helped Mira reclaim pieces of herself that had been lost for so long. During these walks, Arjun noticed the resilience in his mother's spirit. Despite everything she had endured, she moved with grace and dignity, her eyes reflecting both strength and vulnerability. He realized that her hardships had not broken her. They had shaped her into someone extraordinary. And in turn, Mira saw the young man her son had become, kind, patient, brave, and full of love. The years of separation had not diminished their bond. Instead, it had given them a deeper appreciation for each other. Family moments grew richer with each passing day. Simple activities, cooking together, sharing meals, reading aloud, or walking in the park, became precious rituals. Arjun's father joined them whenever he could, slowly forming a new family dynamic that included laughter, conversation, and mutual care. Mira, who had once felt invisible and forgotten, now felt seen, valued, and loved. The small home that had always been modest now overflowed with warmth, affection, and the joy of reunion. Emotional healing was not always easy. There were moments when Mira would cry silently, remembering the years of loss and hardship. Arjun would hold her close, comforting her, assuring her that she was not alone anymore. They talked openly about the past, acknowledging the pain, but also celebrating the fact that they had found each other again. Over time, the sorrow of lost years began to blend with the joy of presence, creating a complex yet beautiful tapestry of emotions. One evening, as they sat together on the roof of their home, watching the city lights twinkle below, Mira spoke softly. "I never imagined I would see this day," she said, her voice trembling. "To have you here to feel your love, it's more than I ever dreamed." Arjun smiled, holding her hand. "Mother, we still have a long journey ahead, but we will face it together. Nothing can take us apart now." She nodded, feeling the truth in his words. For the first time in years, she felt hope, not just for the present, but for the future. Arjun also began to help Mira reconnect with the outside world in practical ways. He introduced her to neighbors, helped her navigate local markets, and even encouraged her to visit the local library. Mira, who had once believed that life had nothing to offer her, started to explore opportunities she had never imagined. She discovered small joys in learning, in reading stories, and in sharing knowledge with others. Each day, she grew stronger, more confident, and more connected to the world outside the walls of her home. Together, Arjun and Mira also focused on dreams that had been postponed for years. They talked about small goals, like planting a garden, cooking new recipes, or visiting nearby towns. They dreamed about larger goals too: education, community involvement, and even helping others who were struggling as Mira once had. These dreams gave them purpose, a reason to look forward, and a sense of agency over their lives. For Arjun, helping his mother reclaim her life became a mission filled with love and pride. For Mira, living fully again was a triumph over the years of suffering she had endured. As time went on, the neighborhood began to recognize their story. People who had once known Mira only as a quiet, lonely woman now saw her as a strong, resilient mother reconnecting with her son. Her courage inspired others, especially those who had faced adversity. Arjun's commitment to her and their bond became a model of love, patience, and dedication. Slowly, their story spread, not as a tale of tragedy, but as a testament to hope, resilience, and the enduring power of family. The emotional journey of mother and son also brought personal growth. Arjun learned patience, empathy, and the strength of quiet care. Mira rediscovered courage, self-worth, and the joy of connection. Together, they rebuilt a life that balanced memories of the past with the promise of the future. The simple act of living together, of sharing daily experiences, became a profound celebration of life's second chances. Finally, one sunny morning, Arjun and Mira stood together at the edge of the park near their home, watching children play and neighbors walk by. Mira turned to Arjun, a serene smile on her face. "Arjun, we have come a long way, haven't we?" she said softly. Arjun nodded, his heart full. "Yes, mother, and we will continue every day together." She held his hand, feeling the strength of their bond, the weight of the years they had lost, and the promise of a future filled with love and hope. Their journey, though shaped by hardship, had become a story of triumph. A story of a mother and son who had been separated by fate, yet found each other again against all odds. A story of healing, understanding, and the enduring power of love. And as they walked home together, hand in hand, the city around them seemed brighter, warmer, and full of endless possibilities.